Obviously, sad day, country music today. What was your general reaction when you heard the news about Merle Haggard?
I was sitting. We're in recording studio as we speak, and I was sitting in a chair in here, and I got a message on my phone. My manager had sent me and said Merle Haggard just died. And of course, I knew he had been sick, but I had no idea he was that sick. I had heard a while back he had double pneumonia, and he'd gone in for treatment, and I just assumed he was getting better because I hadn't heard anything about him being worse. And usually, it's a pretty small community, and usually, if somebody's very sick or there's reason to be concerned, you usually hear about it. But I didn't hear anything else about Merle, and it was very much of a surprise to start with. And I told the guys, and just he was one of a kind. He was one of the few. There's a few people in the business that you can name their first name and everybody knows who you're talking about, like Elvis. You know, when you say Merle in the country music business, everybody knows you're talking about Merle Haggard. You don't have to say Merle Haggard, you just say Merle, and everybody knows what you're talking about. And very few people get to that status. That not just the community itself, not just the professionals, but the people, the fans. They just call him Merle. It's like Merle, Willie, Merle, George, I mean, just a few people get to that point, and he was one of them.
What was it about his music, his sound, that changed country music and made such an impact in the big picture?
He was one of us. When I say us, I'm talking about the common people, because that's what I consider myself to be. I come from a blue-collar background. He spoke and wrote and sang in a language that everybody understood. When he said something, there was no abstract to it. You had to stop and scratch your head and wonder what he was talking about. You knew what he was talking about. Mama tried to raise me better, but ended up in prison doing life without parole, 21, I'm one step ahead of the law. He's fugitive. He's the things that touch people, the situations that people live on a daily basis. Merle Haggard was good at documenting that and about telling about it. And when he sang, you can understand what he was saying. You knew what he was talking about. You understood his songs, and plus the fact you got the opportunity to listen to that great voice of his, which was you could hear 5 notes of Merle Haggard's song and you knew who it was. I could hear 2 notes and just about tell you who it was, and just about everybody else could. That's a Merle song. It's a Merle Haggard song. That's Merle's new song. Turn it up, And that's he reached a place in the entertainment business that very few people reach. He never was also ran in a 50-year career. I guess it would be at least that much, and maybe even more. He never went away from the time he started. From the first time we started hearing about him, regardless if he had a record on the air, he didn't have whatever was happening. Everybody was always aware of Merle Haggard. And when he came to town, people went to see him. He was that kind of an artist.
Obviously known for the Bakersfield sound. What was it about that specifically that kind of changed the sound or changed country music?
Well, this, of course, Buck Owens is out there. Buck had that great sound, and Merle, of course, I think that's a media thing to a big extent. People say, the Bakersfield sound. Well, Buck and Merle don't sound alike to me. It just happened to be people from the same area that happened to hit at the same time. It's like people call about Southern rock. I've never seen Southern rock as being a genre. It's a genre of people rather than a genre of music. So they happen to be from the same place. If it had been, Mojave, they would have said the Mojave sound or whatever. I don't see it. I never saw it as being a musical movement other than it just came from the same place. But as far as changing music was concerned, they both very much, did it from Buck Owens and Merle Haggard from very much of a combo sort of a thing. They had their own bands. They always had great bands. Merle always had a great band. He always had a great traveling band, and they were built around him. And he, like I said, what he did about changing music, he inspired several thousand young people to try to sing like him. I heard Larry Gatlin say one time something about, he said, half the kids try to sing like George Jones, and the other half try to sing like Merle Haggard, And I mean, it was true at that time to a big extent, because you got to start somewhere. And for somebody you admire, you know, with me it was the bluegrass guys. It was Bill Monroe and Flat and Scruggs and people. But I used to try to sing like Lester Flat. When you sing like Lester Flat, you know, open your mouth, you stop right there, you know. Well, that's a pretty simplistic thing to say, but I loved them. I mean, they were my, you know, and I tried to sound like them, tried to sing like them, everybody. So that was the thing with the generation that was around when Merle came along. They literally tried to sing like Merle. They sang his songs. They tried to sing the songs they wrote sound like Merle.
What do you think his legacy will be?
Merle's legacy will be the great music he left us. His songs are you listen. In fact, right before I came up here, our engineer Casey had his phone. He said he was just pulled up a Merle Haggard song that I hadn't heard before, and I mean it's like, you know, that's what he left us. It's that great music that people will be listening to from now on. People will be listening to Merle Haggard. People will be admiring Merle Haggard. They'll be playing Merle Haggard. They'll play more Merle Haggard records on the radio today than they've played in the last 5 years together, I'm sure. And it's a dead blame shame they would not play him while he was alive, because he was just as good as anybody they had on the air, and just because it was not the latest thing going on, they didn't play Merle Haggard. What a shame. What a great artist.
We know we've seen a lot of tributes, people on Twitter and social media. Have you heard anything else around Nashville Country Music Hall of Fame? Any other tributes or possible things in the works?
I put it on Twitter as soon as I found it out, because people be interested, and I put it up immediately as soon as David let me know. I have not been. I've been here in the studio. I have not been. In fact, I've been doing interviews for the last good little while, but I have not really had the opportunity. I'm sure social media is full of comments and Twitters and so on and so forth, and Facebook and all that. I'm sure it's full of that, but I have not had a chance to look at it. I don't know, really.
I'm sure the city, I mean, we got Tin Pan South this week and stuff. I'm sure there'll be some kind of...
Well, this is not going to, you know, this is not a one-day story.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is going to go on for quite a while, because that's the status of artist that he was. He reached way down deep in the common man, the common people, and blue-collar people. It was that same way with George Jones. I remember at George Jones' memorial, they had the public came in, and it was like you know, he's our man. That's Merle Haggard. He's our man. He's another one of our men, and he will long be remembered, and he should be long be remembered.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.